The throne room of Velaris Prime fell silent as Queen Nalira received the news. Her daughter, Princess Kara, had been declared missing in action during the border skirmish with the Draxian Empire. The holographic display showed the wreckage of the diplomatic shuttle, scattered across an asteroid field in contested space. No survivors had been found. No bodies had been recovered. Nalira sat motionless on her crystalline throne, her silver skin losing its luminescence. The courtiers around her bowed their heads in shared grief. For 3 cycles, the Velaron people had fought to maintain their independence against Draxian expansion. They had lost thousands, but this loss cut deeper than any military defeat. Kara had not been a soldier. She had been a mediator, traveling to neutral territory to negotiate a ceasefire. 23 years old, brilliant and compassionate, she had volunteered for the mission despite the danger. Now she was gone, claimed by the same war she had tried to end. The queen dismissed her court and sat alone in the vast chamber. The bioluminescent panels in the walls dimmed to match her sorrow. She had ruled for 40 years, had made countless difficult decisions, had sent soldiers into battle, knowing some would not return. But nothing had prepared her for this. Days passed. The war continued. Nalira performed her duties with mechanical precision, signing orders and attending briefings, but the light had gone out of her eyes. Her advisors worried. Her people mourned. The royal physicians could do nothing for a wound that had no physical form. Then, on the 7th day, a message arrived through unofficial channels. The sender was human, part of an independent freight operation that occasionally ran supplies through the border regions. His name was Jack Morrison, and his message was brief. He had information about Princess Kira. He requested a private audience. The advisors urged caution. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years prior. They were known for being unpredictable, sometimes reckless, but also remarkably resourceful. They had no stake in the Valeron-Draxian conflict. What could this human possibly know? Nalira granted the audience anyway. She had nothing left to lose. Jack Morrison arrived at the palace in a battered cargo ship that looked like it had been through a dozen firefights. He was tall by Veleron standards, with dark skin and gray threading through his black hair. He wore a practical flight suit and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who had spent years navigating dangerous space. The queen received him in a private chamber, accompanied only by her head of security. Jack bowed, a gesture he had clearly researched, though the execution was imperfect. "Your Majesty," he began, his translator rendering his words in perfect Veleron. "I'm going to be direct, because I think that's what you need right now. Your daughter is alive." Nalira felt something crack inside her chest. Hope was a dangerous thing. "Explain," she commanded. Jack activated a portable holoprojector. The image showed a Draxian detention facility on a remote moon called Krath 7. 3 days ago, I was making a delivery to a mining colony near the Draxian border. I have contacts in that area, people who trade information. One of them told me about a high-value prisoner being held at this facility. A young Veleron female, diplomatic credentials, kept isolated from other prisoners. The Draxians claimed there were no survivors, Nalira said, her voice carefully controlled. They lied. My source says they've been interrogating her, trying to extract intelligence about Veleron defense systems. So far, she hasn't broken. The security chief stepped forward. Why should we believe you? You could be a Draxian agent, spreading disinformation. Jack met his gaze steadily. I could be, but I'm not. I'm a freight hauler who happens to think that kidnapping diplomats and lying about it is a pretty lousy way to fight a war. He turned back to Nalira. I've been running cargo in this sector for 15 years. I'm not political, but I'm not blind either. What the Draxians did crosses a line. Why come to us? Nalira asked. Why not simply sell this information to the highest bidder? Something shifted in Jack's expression, a flash of old pain. Because 5 years ago, my own daughter was caught in a station attack during a corporate dispute. She was 12. I got her back, but it took weeks, and every day I didn't know where she was or if she was alive nearly destroyed me. He paused. I saw the broadcasts of your announcement. I recognized what I saw in your eyes. So I'm here. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Humans were difficult to read, their facial expressions and body language different from Velaron norms. But she had not survived 40 years of rule without learning to sense truth. If she is alive, why not simply tell me where she is? Why not let our military handle the rescue? Jack shook his head. Because Krath 7 is deep in Draxian territory. Any military operation would be detected long before you got close. It would take a fleet, would escalate the war. Then honestly, by the time you fought your way in, they'd probably move her, or worse. He leaned forward. But a single cargo ship, running a routine supply route, making an unscheduled stop for repairs? That might slip through. You're proposing to extract her yourself. I'm proposing to try. I can't guarantee success. The facility is well guarded, and I'll need help on the inside. But I have advantages your military doesn't. I'm not flagged as a combatant. My ship is registered as civilian, and I've gotten in and out of tighter spots than this. The security chief objected immediately, outlining the risks and the possibility of a trap. But Nalira held up a hand for silence. She looked at the human who had crossed through dangerous space to bring her this news, who asked for nothing in return except the chance to risk his own life. What do you need? She asked. Over the next 2 days, Jack worked with Velaron intelligence to plan the operation. He refused military backup, but accepted technical assistance, updated scanning equipment, a bypass key for Draxian security systems, and detailed information about the facility's layout. He also accepted one Velaron volunteer, a combat medic named Terran, who had served with Kara and insisted on being part of any rescue attempt. Nalira met with Jack one final time before he departed. If you succeed, she said quietly, the Velaran people will be forever in your debt. Jack smiled, a very human expression. If I succeed, Your Majesty, seeing you get your daughter back will be payment enough. Everything else is just details. His ship, the Wandering Star, departed that evening. For 6 days, Nalira heard nothing. She continued her duties, attended briefings, made decisions. But at night, alone in her chambers, she allowed herself to hope. On the 7th day, her personal communicator chimed with an incoming message on an encrypted channel. Jack's face appeared on the screen, bruised and weary, but grinning. Package secured, he said simply. We're coming home. The image shifted, and Nalira saw her daughter. Kara was thinner than before, with marks of exhaustion and mistreatment visible on her silver skin. But she was alive. She was whole. And when she saw her mother's face, she began to cry. Mother, Kara whispered. Nalira found she could not speak. She simply nodded, pressing her hand against the screen as if she could reach through it. The Wandering Star arrived at Velaris Prime 18 hours later. Nalira waited at the private landing pad, surrounded by medical personnel and security, but she saw only the cargo ramp lowering and her daughter emerging into the light. They met halfway, and for the first time in 40 years of rule, Queen Nalira of Velaris Prime stopped being a monarch and became simply a mother holding her child. Jack Morrison stood nearby, supporting the limping Terran, who had taken a plasma burn during the extraction. He watched the reunion with a small, satisfied smile. Later, after the physicians had examined Kara and the celebrations had begun, Nalira found Jack preparing his ship for departure. She approached alone, without ceremony. "Stay," she offered. "Name your reward. Wealth, status, a position in our defense forces. Anything." Jack shook his head. "I appreciate it, Your Majesty, but I'm a freight hauler. It's what I know. Besides, there are other people out there who might need help, other families torn apart by this war." He paused. "Though if you really want to do something for me, work toward ending this conflict. Make sure what happened to Kara doesn't happen to anyone else." "I will," Nalira promised. She watched him lift off, the wandering star rising into the evening sky. In the throne room, her daughter was recovering, surrounded by loved ones. The light had returned to the palace, to the people, to the queen's own heart. A human had done this, not for glory or reward, but because he understood suffering and chose to act against it. In the vast complexity of galactic politics and interstellar war, one human with a battered cargo ship had reminded her that individual choices still mattered. The war with the Draxian Empire would eventually end through negotiation rather than conquest. Years later, historians would point to the return of Princess Kara as a turning point, a moment when the conflict's cruelty became impossible to ignore. But Nalira never forgot the simpler truth. Sometimes salvation comes not from armies or strategies, but from the quiet courage of one person who decides that someone else's pain matters enough to risk everything. The galaxy needed more humans like Jack Morrison, and the Queen made sure her people knew his story.